And then now I'm going to turn things over to Michelle and Brigham. I did take a peek at the slide deck in preparation for today, and I know that our presenters have an introduction slide, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves in their own words. But I do want to say that these two work to make the community I live in a better place. And so for now, take it away, Michelle and Brigham.
All right, thank you. Actually, I think we have Brigham up first for introductions. So if you want to go ahead and do that.
Sure. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Brigham Hoegh. I am the Cass County Wellness Coordinator. I've been in this role since late 2019. And in this role, I facilitate what we call Healthy Cass County that you see there on the screen. This is a community network that promotes the health and well-being of residents of Cass County. And typically I try to recruit as many people as I can to join this group. We meet monthly, and Michelle is one of those people that I had worked to recruit for this group. I also just wanted to point out at this time that many communities have similar types of groups. And if you're looking for connections with Health and Wellness Coalition, maybe reach out to local hospital, extension office, city hall, or chamber. I also manage produce in the park, a farmer's market that's in Atlantic, where we work to welcome outside organizations such as libraries to come share information and provide free activities. So I just wanted to point out that if you've got a farmer's market in your community, that's another great place to find connections.
And I am Michelle Andersen. I've been at the Atlantic Public Library for 5 years, but I got my start in public libraries as a trustee when I lived in a different state. Since returning to Iowa in 2014, I've worked in an academic library at a community college and as a director of a super small size A library and now here in Atlantic. And just for reference, because I think it will help librarians understand our community just a little bit more, Atlantic's population is just under 7,000 people, and our county population sits right about 13,000. So Atlantic is a size E library, so we are the largest of the small libraries in the state. So after COVID shutdowns, I really wanted to bring laptops or tablets to the library, and I was looking for ways to fund that. I had done some pricing and knew that I wouldn't be able to make that happen without outside funding. I get newsletters from all sorts of organizations because that's a good way to watch for funding opportunities. I saw that the network of the National Library of Medicine, also known as NNLM, had some awards available. After reading through them, I thought that one would fit a need here in Atlantic, and it was the Public Library Collaboration Award. It read, "The Public Library Collaboration Award supports partnerships between public libraries and other community organizations to build capacity for access and use of credible health information to advance health literacy and digital health literacy with meaningful engagement of diverse populations." I knew I could easily make the case that laptops or tablets at the library would build capacity for access and use of credible health information and advance digital health literacy. There was just one problem. It was a collaboration, and I needed someone to collaborate with. I knew Healthy Cass County existed. I had interacted with Brigham on some other things, mostly about produce in the park and mostly by emails of 5 sentences or less. But I remembered reading the results of a community health needs assessment and that mental health was a top result. And so I may have found a project that fits the grant guidelines and addresses a community need, because a personal device like a tablet or laptop would be a more private way to access mental health information online. So I reached out to Brigham and Healthy Cass County.
All right, so the first thing I'm going to do here is put a link in the chat box because Michelle mentioned the community health needs assessment. So the community health needs assessment is done in every county in Iowa once every 5 years. And the link I put in the chat here are the current assessments and plans in case you want to look up what health needs your county has identified. Most counties, by the way, have identified mental health, but on the screen here, you can see the top needs that we identified in our last one. This was 2021 when we last did this in Cass County. So we chose these top 7 needs, but I've got mental health in bold because not only was it number 1, but it was really number 1 when whichever way we tried to look at the health needs in the county. So to identify those, we would look at, some secondary data sets and whatnot, but we also did a survey of health professionals and health and wellness folks in the area, and then a separate survey of the general public. And in both cases, those groups both identified mental health as our top need in the county. So when Michelle reached out and said, hey, I've got something that might help us address mental health, it was like, well, that's my top priority at work anyway. Let's get to it.
Nice. So I wrote a grant to be executed in 3 parts. The first was bringing tablets to my library, and I already shared a little bit about that. But because Healthy Cass County is a county organization, I felt that I should include all county libraries in some way in the second and third parts. So these were written to include all 6 libraries in Cass County, and that is to provide materials for circulation and to offer public programs. As I talk about each part of the grant, you can see statements on the slide of how each part connected back into the award description. So let's start by talking a little more about the tablets. The tablets can provide a more private experience for users looking for mental health information online. I chose to purchase a Hublet tablet station through Envisionware rather than laptops because of the security features already built into the patron delivery system. It wouldn't take any staff time between uses. Once the tablet station was installed and ready for use, I created direct links to the library's catalog, because how could I not, to Medline Plus mental health page and to COVID Recovery Iowa, now called Project Recovery Iowa, as grant to fulfill grant requirements. Once the tablets were set up, I offered weekly show and tell mini programs and used them in my technology tutor program. This was the only part of the grant that was exclusively for the Atlantic Public Library. And just as an aside, you can see that photo there of a tablet open, and every place you see our little light bulb logo, that's a link that I set up. So the one at the top left is the one to our catalog. And then the ones on the bottom, I think the first one was a survey for tablet users. And then the other 2 were Medline Plus Mental Health and Project Recovery Iowa. So next, we purchased materials for circulation. This was a hard list to prepare. Since small libraries often have small budgets and purchase mostly popular titles, I intentionally selected nonfiction books and resources to be distributed to libraries in my county. Each library received 8 children's books, a preschool yoga kit, 13 teen books, 2 card games designed for tweens and teens, 15 adult books, 4 documentaries on DVD, and 1 tone therapy system, totaling a value of about $1,000 per library. Since I had the grant, I got to purchase everything times 6 and sorted them as they arrived. I printed all the sticker book plates, so each item would be labeled and to be indicated that it was purchased with grant funds and where those funds came from. And I completed supporting handouts like the brochure you see here. This was the inside of a fold-over brochure. All the other libraries in the county had to do was agree to process the books and circulate them. I also asked each library to create a display of the items for at least 1 month and encouraged them to send these bookmarks with each item as it checked out to get feedback on whether the items were helpful. And that's the one thing about grants. They do force you to find a way to survey. Amazingly, those surveys are always full of information. So on that far right side there, that was a bookmark. And we just made them really generic and really easy to do. So at our library, when people picked something up and checked it out, we popped a bookmark in there. And the only thing we asked them was the name of the item and did you find this helpful? And would you recommend it to someone else? That's all we got, all we asked them to do. And most of ours came back. I can't speak for the other libraries, but most of ours did come back with at least something circled. And then the whole back side was just blank lines if they wanted to write more. And then the third thing I encouraged all of our libraries to do is to create a book list. So we use a book list feature on our ILS. We use Apollo from Biblionics. And we use this to keep a list of the current Iowa books, so the Iowa Children's Choice, the Iowa Goldfinch, and so on. So we also added a mental health resources book list. This way, these materials are still easy to find even after those displays came down. And since all libraries in Cass County use the same ILS, I included instructions on how to create that book list feature for the other libraries as well. So that is the circulation. The last part of the grant was to provide public programs on mental health. This I could not have done without Brigham. Because of her work with Healthy Cass County and the contacts she already had, she was instrumental in program planning and promotion. So we're going to talk through some of these different programs we did.
So the first program I'm going to draw your attention to is there on the right, therapy FAQ. So one thing we knew about seeking help for mental health is that a whole lot of folks don't know what it looks like to look for a therapist, to be in therapy, who qualifies for therapy. So we knew this was a top need. So we worked to bring in different connections to be on our panel. And we did this event virtually, as you can see. So we had therapists from Cass County. We also roped in Project Recovery Iowa that Michelle referenced before, but I just really want to call out how good of a partner and resource they are. We had therapists that specialize in older adults, more generalists. We had the session moderated by a very outgoing but down-to-earth woman who works in prevention within the community, so we knew she would quickly establish rapport. We used grant funding in that the library already had a Zoom subscription, but we added a 30-day webinar subscription so that folks could specifically attend that event without their names shown. We know there's a lot of stigma around mental health, and we wanted that to not be an issue. We also paid honorariums for panelists and our host, and we paid for our recording to be closed captioned after the fact, so when we shared it, people would have access to that accessibility feature. The company that we used for that closed captioning was actually recommended by NNLM, and they turned around that closed captioning in just a couple of hours.
It was pretty amazing. So the original grant proposal was mostly for in-person programs, but with COVID numbers still relatively high and not wanting to alienate participants who weren't ready to gather in a room, I jumped on an opportunity to arrange for a virtual author visit with Dr. Doreen Dodgen-McGee. And that's over here on the left. I don't know, can you see my arrow? Okay. She released a book called Restart, Designing a Healthy Post-Pandemic Life in October of 2021. I found her because another librarian gave her a glowing review in the Programming Librarian Facebook group. On a whim, I thought, I have grant money. I wonder if I can afford her. So I sent her an email inquiry, and she responded right away with, I love libraries. When do you want me? And I still remember frantically texting Brigham and both of us looking at various community calendars to pick a handful of dates with the least overlap of other events. We again used grant funding to use the Zoom webinar platform and pay an honorarium for the speaker. We also used Facebook ads. This was my first foray into online ads. Brigham's experience, especially with Produce in the Park, was that it produced far greater results than print or radio ads that she had done in the past. And since this would be an online virtual presentation, it made sense to promote it online. The presentation was fantastic. I even had a friend from another state ask if it was okay to join us. And my only regret is that I messed up the recording, so it was only a live event. But if you were there, it was so worth it.
It was a great event. The next event that I'm going to talk about is right below that one on your screen. Yes, question, persuade, refer. So that's often referred to as QPR, and it is a suicide prevention training. So we did this training at 3 different locations in Cass County. The first location was in Atlantic, where Michelle had a table where she set up those library resources, all those books that we got from the grant that she showed you earlier. She had a table with all of those resources. Then we did the event at 2 other locations, and those were both at public libraries or in conjunction with public libraries at other locations in the county. So at both of those events, we also had the resources that Michelle talked about earlier. We did not get grant funding for food, but we decided to raise external funding from other organizations to bring food in. Again, keep in mind, mental health is a top health need. So we have a lot of organizations that were interested in making these successful events, and they really were. I'm also going to put in the chat the link to Question, Persuade, Refer, because that program is put on by Iowa State Extension and Outreach, and that we actually were able to partner with another grant through them that covered the expense of the training. But the website I'm going to send you to talks more about what that training is and how you can access it virtually and whatnot. Lastly, we use Facebook ads again. And the reason Facebook ads were particularly important in these events is that you can target them by location. So, we had events in Atlantic, Anita, and Griswold, and we were able to put those specific events in radiuses around those cities.
Right. And just as kind of a funny story, when I had the book table at the Atlantic QPR training, I did have somebody who came up and she's like, I am going on vacation. I'm leaving this afternoon. This book would be perfect. Can I take it with me? And I said, yes, I know who you are. I know where you live. I will check it out to you when I get back to the library. But she just was so, she found something that was just going to meet a need right then and there. And how could I say no? As part of the application process, NNLM asked us to plan for programming that we would offer to kind of outline that. So the therapy FAQ and the QPR presentations were part of the plan. But because there was such a push on mental health resources already, we were able to partner with other grants. And so it didn't take as much resources from the NNLM grant. QPR is a great example of that. We thought we would have to pay per presentation, and because of other grants, we didn't have to. So with the encouragement of the staff at NNLM, who are trying to find ways to reach into faith-based groups, we pivoted and used some of our grant money to create 2 faith-based book kits. I was very careful to select books that addressed mental health, but didn't promote just one denomination or theology. although both kits are Christian. We used Holy Vulnerability as a chapter by chapter book discussion group at the library, led by one of our local pastors. It was fantastic. We had such a great response that I had to order more books. The other set went to a church and it also got good reviews. That's the Rhythms of Renewal. We plan to use that kit here for a book group at the library in March. And just as another aside, NNLM does offer monthly book club titles that are linked by various health and medical topics. And those are freely available to anyone. And it's a fantastic resource. So you can look up that NNLM Reading Club and you will find that. The grant purchased the book kit contents, and again, we used Facebook ads for our group that met at the library. So Brigham and I were meeting every Wednesday to keep up with program planning needs, and we found that we had common interests and common goals, and so we decided to continue our weekly check-ins beyond the grant programs. This sometimes is a text, sometimes an email, sometimes a phone call, and sometimes drop by in person. Brigham often comes by with handouts on various community happenings and other resources, such as a SNAP flyer, also known as food stamps. The SNAP flyer had pull tabs on it, and when it was almost out of tabs, I contacted Brigham again. Since I knew that she had brought the first one, I knew she could get me another one.
I'm going to talk about that picture that you see here. And isn't that just a lovely picture? This is Michelle right outside the library in front of our Grow Another Row stand. So we had been doing Grow Another Row in Cass County, encouraging people to share fresh produce across the county. And it was, first we had one stand and that worked so well, we wanted more. So where could we put stands that there would be people? And Atlantic Public Library was an excellent location. This was our most used stand across the whole county. You can see right there, it's right outside the door to the library. Our library is actually just a couple blocks from the food pantry and right across the street from the city park. And anyway, this worked so well. So you see right there, mostly it was fresh produce, but what we started off with were some food plants. So Michelle is there. She was going out to water the plants or something when we took this photo, but I just love all the colors that are in it. So further connections, library participates in Healthy Cass County meetings that I mentioned at the beginning, but every other month we do our meetings virtually. And Michelle offers space in the library where folks who maybe aren't comfortable jumping on Zoom themselves or don't have access to it can join the meetings. And that has been such a good thing. We see, we've seen people from EMS, we've seen landlords in the community who maybe don't always come to our Healthy Cass meetings, but we publicize them. And then conversations happen there at the library. And often Michelle will send me something and say, hey, I want you to know that in this room, these questions came up, and we have built further partnerships. One of the important sessions we recently did was about the Micronesian culture, the Asian Pacific Islander culture in Cass County. We did another session on hazardous lead abatement. Mental health resources is another one. Also, we had a Healthy Cass County booth at the fair, and with my connection with Michelle, I was able to make sure that she was involved in that as well.
Yeah, and that was perfect because it's overwhelming to us as a library to figure out how we're going to have a presence at the fair for 7 days when we're trying to keep the library open. So it was good to have the library show up in some different partnerships at different times throughout the fair, but not be committed to be there all the time. And then Brigham also asked me to join meeting with a group of ladies at one of our low income housing. And she invited me to just kind of say, hey, the library is here for you. But then it turned into a couple of them signing up for our homebound service. And I think they just have a better understanding of what types of services are available at the library. And even though not all of them signed up for Homebound, Brigham still shoots me an email when it's going to be time to go meet with them again, because we send out like library discards and magazine donations, because I think some of the reason not everybody signed up for Homebound is because we do say up front that if you lose an item, you'll have to pay for it. And low income folks can get scared when they think they might have to pay for it. So we do send out some hand-me-downs that can go out to them and they can share with each other that don't necessarily have to come back to the library. The other thing that Brigham has been great for is when I'm trying to wrap my head around other program ideas. So we did a Preparing for the Holidays series last November that was it was just a little bit of everything. It was, hosting, it was cleaning, it was grief during the holidays. It was just, anyway, but she helped me wrap my head around what types of presenters could fill in some of those categories that I was trying to get. And then she also helped me think through our year-long reading challenge, which this year is a bit of a risk, and I kind of stretching myself, but I've got Brigham behind me and I know that it will work out really well. We are also still brainstorming for new grant possibilities that we can work on together, specifically looking at the Libraries Transform Communities grant for accessible communities. And we're dreaming about civic engagement. And I remember emailing Brigham and saying, you've got to find a way for this to fit in Healthy Cass County because I need you to help me work this out. And then she replied with a link to something. I don't know. Do you remember what you sent me? She sent me a link to something that was, yes, civic engagement is part of healthy living.
Yes, no, I remember I saw that. I don't remember the exact link, but yes, that social connectedness, engaged in community, feeling empowered is totally wellness. So I'm absolutely in. I was going to talk about a couple other things we're thinking about partnering on. So we are considering working with our local chamber to do a book discussion with local business owners to address the older population, or folks 50 and older, I should say. There's a book titled Stage, Not Age, and Michelle wanted to point out that there's actually a book discussion at the state level on this book. But Michelle read the book, and if you remember in our list of 7 health needs, older adults is one of the big needs we have to address in Cass County. We've got a larger, older population, and she said, "Hey, you need to read this book," and I read it. And so anyway, now we're thinking about possibly 2024 working with businesses on that. That's just one example of things we might do together in the future.
So as we were preparing our presentation and thinking back through everything that we've done together, I said, but why does this work? Why do we think that this is a good partnership? And it really came down to that we're both committed to bettering our community using the resources that we have available to us. So Brigham has this broad definition of what it means to be healthy, like civic engagement is health. And she says, I have a broad definition of what library services can look like. So we're just going to take a minute or so here to say why we appreciate one another. So I appreciate that Brigham is creative and that she doesn't think like a librarian. It is very refreshing to have a person not in libraries to bounce ideas off of. And not only that, but brainstorming with Brigham is all options open, like brainstorming is supposed to be. We don't hear the, yeah, but we tried that once and it didn't work, or, but we couldn't do that here. We really, when we brainstorm and we just dream, that's what we do. We're like, what if we had transportation vouchers so people could go to and from the library? What if, it's just open-ended. And I so appreciate having another community person that I can have those times with. And my third reason why I like to work with Brigham is because she's an excellent writer, and I always let her write the press releases.
Yes, right. So what I like working about, what I like about working with Michelle, Michelle has access and excellent knowledge of the range of library services. You know, before I began working with her, I did not understand what library services meant beyond books and maybe DVDs. The second reason is she is willing to get outside of the library. So I find it so incredibly important in my work to go where people are. You know, Michelle briefly mentioned that discussion with some lower income adults. Many of those women have no access to transportation. So it's really important for me to do my wellness work going to them. And Michelle's willing to go along on those types of things and then creatively find ways to get resources that would reach a population that is certainly not going to make it to the library. The third thing is that Michelle is very non-judgmental and empowering. She facilitates people and groups pursuing their interests in whatever their interests are.
Awesome. Well, we never got interrupted with questions. And so we kind of went a little fast, but that is the end of our preparation. You are welcome to ask questions now, or you can find me at the library. So my email is there. If you're interested in following more of the work Brigham does here in Cass County, you can follow her on Facebook with Cass County Local Food or over at Healthy Cass County.
Okay, and I just wanted to say that there were a couple of questions, but they seemed like they could wait to the end. So, so I did hold them. So one of the questions, actually this one came up a couple of times. Michelle, some of the participants would like a list of the titles that were in the book bundles given to libraries.
Okay, I do have a handout that is the bulk list titles. And so if that was you, throw me an email at atlanticpubliclibrary@gmail.com and I can send it right back to you as an attachment.
Okay, and then another question was, has anyone done any lunch and learn programs for the seniors and partnered with Meals on Wheels? So I thought maybe if you guys wanted to talk about that, you could, but that was another question that came up.
Yeah, so I said we have not specifically done, Michelle and I have not specifically done Meals on Wheels. Now, Michelle, I'm not sure if you've done this, but I have sent handouts and information home with folks who receive Meals on Wheels. So I know that locally we've been able to send things home to,
right.
To that
we
population.
have. The problem is that we were using Meals on Wheels to promote things that people had to come to the library for. So there still wasn't a way for us to fill a transportation issue, or if it's just a medical issue that they're unable to leave their home. So Meals on Wheels wasn't really the avenue for us to have a positive response, because we were still mostly telling them about opportunities for seniors at the library and not necessarily opportunities that could be brought to them, but something we could do in the future.
Michelle, I don't know, you might know if all other libraries already do this, but I really love what you have with homebound delivery service with the library.
Yeah, homebound is pretty common.
Okay.
A lot of libraries do offer that service. Our homebound service is once a month, and we deliver to anyone homebound, but we also include in our homebound delivery home daycares. So we have, I think, 5 home daycares that we swap out library materials for monthly, so that the provider doesn't have to come do that.
One more idea that I want to promote, that you started the VIP connections when talking about the senior population. Do you think you have a minute to share about that? I love that group.
Okay. Well, I've come to love that group. So at our Cass County Supervisor's presentation in, it must have been 21, fall of 21, one of the supervisors went around and asked each library to say what they were doing to serve the seniors in their community. And I made some excuse about how Atlantic is big enough that the library isn't the only place that serves seniors. So we have a YMCA, we have a hospital that's really good that has rehabilitation services and does public health programming up at the hospital. So I said, the library isn't really the only place that seniors look. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, yeah, I think I better try to do something. So I named the program VIP Connections, because the whole idea was to connect seniors in our community. And so we meet every Tuesday morning. I make a pot of coffee, put on some hot water for tea, and it's just grown into, so it's been almost a year. I think we started either last February or March. And it's really grown into this neat group of people who are committed to coming. One of the ladies from the group takes care of inviting guests to come and talk about different things happening in the community. Another lady volunteered to go sit on a county committee so that we can maybe take part in some county funding for senior services. But the part that really gets me is that they're checking up on each other. So we had one lady who came, and then we didn't see her for a long time. And then we found out that she had a health issue and wasn't able to leave her house. And so everyone said, well, let's send her a card. Let's bring her some cookies. We did a Christmas cookie exchange, and they took care of her. And I was just like, this is what it's about. So yes, that's really grown into a neat community of people, even though we're still a little small. We're only about 10 people. But they are taking care of each other.
I don't see any other new questions, but you still have time. If you have a question, please put it in chat, and I'm sure Michelle and Brigham will address whatever you have on your mind.
I did see something early on where folks said maybe the links to their county community health needs assessments were not clickable. I was able to click through on Polk County, so I'm not exactly sure what the issue was there. But I'm just going to put down a contact for that community health improvement plan in case you're having trouble there. And yes, I can grab the QPR link again.
So QPR is the training. I mean, it's question, persuade, refer. So it's the training to ask questions if you think someone is in imminent danger of suicide. It's persuade them to ask for help, and it's refer them to someone to a medical professional. But it was really good training. I sat through it in Atlantic. So I did the book table before and after the training, and then sat in the training in Atlantic. And it was just really good. Just things like asking someone if they've thought how they're going to commit suicide doesn't put it in their head. They've already thought it. And so, just things like that are good to be reminded of, but we've got to take care of each other. We've got to be aware of what's happening in our community relationships so that we can keep everyone safe.
Okay. And Michelle, there is a question that says, so did your staff receive the training, or did someone come in and provide the training to members of your community, or both?
These were community programs. So I did have myself and another staff member did attend, but we didn't do it as a staff training.
Okay. And then there's another question that says, besides the survey, how else were you both able to quantify the success for the program? Were you able to tell of any changes in your community after the program was integrated with the programming seminars, materials, and tablets?
Oh, so that's a really good question. So we quantified the materials we chose for circulation by number of circulations and feedback on the bookmarks. And then we did project outcome surveys after every program. And that's really, and I hate to say this, but because that's what the grant required, once that grant part was done, it's really easy to set that aside and say, oh yeah, okay, we did that, we're done now. So that's been the end of it. So that was last March, April that we last surveyed about our mental health resources that were funded by the grants. I can say that so we're at Carnegie Library. So youth services is downstairs and adult services is upstairs. And we had originally put the tablet station upstairs, thinking that most youth are more mobile to be able to switch floors to go grab a tablet and take it downstairs. But they just weren't getting the kind of use that we were hoping for. So then we did move the tablet station to downstairs, and we got a lot more. I think within a week, we had as many uses as we had within a month or two. So it's better for it to live downstairs at our library. But a drawback on the Hublet station is I can only see use and time spent. I can't see what apps or links they use that we provided. So it's a little bit harder to track if they're actually accessing those resources using the tablets.
I was going to say, I think, Michelle, we had well over 60 people across the county attend those QPR trainings. In Atlantic, I think the number was between 40 and 50. In the other two cases, I think they were around 25. Might have had a few overlaps in people that attended. Mm-hmm. But those, I thought, were very well attended for public suicide prevention trainings. And I can't say that the library work was directly tied to it, but a link I just put in the chat is from Iowa's Healthiest State Initiative. It's a program called Make It Okay. That's about reducing mental health stigma. That's actually another great program if you're looking for a public mental health program to have at a library. I'm one of the ambassadors, so I actually delivered that training to folks who work at the Cass County Courthouse. Yep, that's the button. But when I did the training for folks that work at the courthouse last spring, so this would have been after we did our QPR sessions, there is an audience poll where we ask, do you believe people in your community care about mental health? And in both sessions that I gave at the courthouse, these are private responses, by the way. Yes, it's Make It Okay. That's the link that I put in there just before. But in both cases, when asked, what does your community think? Their responses were 100% saying my community cares about mental health. And I know from the presenter material, that is not what communities typically say. So when I look at the fact that we were saying mental health is a huge need just very recently, and we're seeing folks now saying people care about mental health, I can't help but think a lot of that work that Michelle did to bring in those programs and promote that stuff. People may not have come to the training, but they at least saw it pop up on their Facebook feed that, hey, there is this happening in our community. And I think that makes a big difference.
Right. Sometimes people just need permission to talk about the issues that are concerning them. And if they're provided with a welcoming space, then those conversations can happen and hopefully, some other decisions won't happen because people will be able to talk and find other avenues for relief.
I did see a question pop up. Yep, the Hublet tablet station is for use in library only. My board was hesitant to do tablets or laptops that went out of the library, so we just focused on providing a more private experience inside the library.
Right, so we're almost about 5 minutes. We have 5 minutes until the very end. So if you're thinking about a question, this is kind of last call. And I did want to say over the mic that we were having some issues with closed captioning. There was a message that was put into chat. We apologize for any issues that you might have experienced. And if you missed part of the training because of that issue, please just go back and the recordings will have that information. I apologize for you needing to do something twice to get what you need, but if this discussion was important to you, I hope you make time for it. And then I do want to put a couple of links in the chat. If you are ready for your next session, I want to give you a link back to the to the schedule. So I'll do that. And if this was your last session for the day, I want to give you a session to go to the CE form so you can get continuing education credit for attending today. So I will put that in there too. And I haven't seen any final questions, but you still have 3 minutes.
I was going to comment, I put 2 more links in the chat. If you can't tell, I love sharing links. And so if anyone is watching and you're thinking, I think Brigham and Michelle might enjoy this, or this, the answer is probably yes. Go ahead and send it to us. But the links I just put in right now are for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the Iowa chapter, and then the affiliates within Iowa. And I just wanted to point out that NAMI also offers a number of free mental health related trainings. It seems like a lot of folks are resonating with the mental health theme that we talked about today for various age groups. And they also kind of specialize in free support groups. So depending on which area of the state you're in, they're often looking for free spaces to host those support groups. And I wonder if libraries might be good partners. That's awesome. I'm seeing Melissa say that her library is a host. Oh, wonderful. Burlington as well. Well, thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for participating.